This joint assembly is convened pursuant to the provisions of JRS 44. And I'll just take a moment to recognize that this is the first joint assembly, all of us here together. Again, this is convened pursuant to the provisions of JRS 44, which the clerk will now read.
JRS 44, joint resolution providing for a joint assembly to vote on the retention of 6 superior judges. Whereas declarations have been submitted by the following 6 superior judges that they be retained for another 6-year term. Judge Thomas S. Durkin, Judge David Fenster, Judge Carrie A. McDonald-Katie, Judge Robert A. Mello, Judge John Patch, and Judge Helen M. Tour. And whereas the procedures of the Joint Assembly, of the Joint Committee on Judicial Retention require at least one public hearing and the review of information provided by each candidate and the comments of members of the Vermont Bar and the public. And whereas the committee was unable to fulfill its responsibilities under subsection 608B of Title IV to evaluate the judicial performance of the candidates seeking to be retained in office by March 17, 2022, the date specified in subsection 608E of Title IV, and whereas subsection 608G of Title IV permits the General Assembly to defer action on the retention of judges to a subsequent joint assembly when the committee is not able to make a timely recommendation. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the 2 houses meet in joint assembly on Thursday, March 24, 2022 at 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the forenoon to vote on the retention of 6 superior judges. And be it further resolved that the joint assembly shall be concurrently conducted electronically, at which members of the General Assembly may participate and debate from a remote location if they notify the Speaker of the House in the case of House members, or the President of the Senate in the case of senators, that the members meet one of the COVID-19 related conditions set forth in 2022 JRH 17, open paren, remote participation in joint committees under restricted COVID-19 related circumstances, close paren, and be it further resolved that the balloting for any members participating remotely shall be conducted through electronic means and a time frame prescribed in the joint assembly where remote members' completed ballots shall be submitted electronically to the Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk of the House, who may provide assistance to those remote voters in accordance with 17 VSA Section 2569, open paren, assistance to voter, close paren, in order to ensure that remote members' votes are not distinguishable from in-person members' votes, in order to maintain the confidentiality of the votes of remote members, and who shall commingle those completed ballots with those of the members who vote in person at the joint assembly. And be it further resolved that in case the vote to retain the judges shall not be made on that day, the 2 houses shall meet in joint assembly at 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the forenoon on each succeeding day, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays excepted, and proceed until the above is completed.
Pursuant to our Constitution and the statutes, we are assembled here today in joint assembly to cast votes on the retention of 6 superior judges. We are operating under the Judicial Retention Act passed in 1976, as amended in subsequent sessions of the General Assembly, which establishes the procedure for retention of incumbent superior judges and magistrates. The date for holding joint assemblies for retention is set by statute to be the 11th Thursday of the session. This year, pursuant to the statute which permits this for VSA Section 608, we have delayed this joint assembly from the 11th Thursday of the session, which was March 17th, to the present day, March 24th. The procedure to be followed requires that the vote be by written ballot. There will be one written ballot containing the names of all the judges of the Superior Court. As there are some participating remotely, pursuant to the provisions of JRS 44, I will later explain the voting procedure for both in-person and remote voting. We shall proceed to the matter of retention of the 6 incumbent superior judges. Under the Judicial Retention Act, which establishes the procedure for the retention of these judges, nominations may not be received from the floor. Rather, each judge seeking retention must file a declaration of intention to seek retention with the Secretary of State, or if a superior judge is appointed after September 1 of the year preceding the expiration of the term of office, that judge shall automatically be a candidate for retention without filing notice. By this means, the name of each judge seeking retention is automatically placed in nomination and considered for retention pursuant to the terms of the Judicial Retention Act. In addition, the Judicial Retention Act provides that when a candidate does so declare for retention, the question be decided automatically is as follows. Shall the following superior judges be retained in office? The statute provides the vote on the question shall be by one written ballot containing the names of all of the superior judges. Accordingly, we will need tellers. The following legislators are now appointed as tellers: Senator White of Windham as chief teller, Senator McDonald of Orange, Senator Collmore of Rutland, Representative Odie of Burlington, Representative Murphy of Fairfax, Representative Nigro of Bennington, Representative Capoli of Rutland City. We shall now proceed to the matter of retention of the incumbent superior judges. For these positions, we have received 6 declarations of intention to seek retention to the office of superior judge from the following: Thomas S. Durkin, David Fenster, Carrie A. McDonald Katie, Robert A. Mello, John Pacht, and Helen M. Torr. The question to be decided in each of these cases is, shall Superior Judge Thomas S. Durkin be retained in office? Yes or no? Shall Superior Judge David Fenster be retained in office? Yes or no? Shall Superior Judge Carrie A. McDonald Katie be retained in office? Yes or no? Shall Superior Judge John Pacht be retained in office? Yes or no? Shall Superior Judge Judge Robert A. Mello be retained in office? Yes or no? And shall Superior Judge Helen M. Torr be retained in office? Yes or no? The ballot you will receive will contain these questions in printed form on one single ballot. The terms of each of these judges is for 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until their successors are elected and qualified. Unless there is an objection, any debate on these judges will be received separately. At the end of the debates for the 6 judges, any general debate on the entire question shall be in order. First, we will receive the report of the Joint Committee on Judicial Retention. The chair, myself, I now recognize the member from Standard, Representative Troiano, for the purpose of receiving the report. Representative, you're now recognized.
Madam President, it's my great pleasure to introduce the report of your Joint Committee on Judicial Retention. Madam President, when our governor appoints our judges to the bench, they must appear before the Joint Committee for Judicial Retention every 6 years. If a judge is appointed to a position which is up for retention in 2 years, this review follows the position and not the judge. This year, the committee reviewed judges who are on the bench for as little as 2 years and others who have appeared for their 3rd and 4th retention. The Judicial Retention Committee today presents to you and the Assembly information concerning 6 of our Superior Court judges. And while we've already heard their names, I will introduce them again. The Honorable Judge Thomas Durkin, the Honorable Judge David Fenster, the Honorable Judge Carrie Ann McDonald Katie, the Honorable Judge Robert Mello, the Honorable Judge John Pacht, and the Honorable Judge Helen Tour. All are seeking to be retained for another 6 years on the bench. The Retention Committee, consisting of 8 members from the House and from the Senate, was charged with evaluating judicial performance, including but not limited to such factors as integrity, judicial temperament, impartiality, health, diligence, legal knowledge, and administrative skills. The judges have submitted information about their education, previous employment, finances, and copies of some of their judicial decisions, and expressions as to why they wish to be retained. They answered questions and participated in interviews with the committee, and were the subject of a public hearing about their performance on the job. Staff members employed by the courts were surveyed, as were attorneys who appear before the judges, guardians ad litem, probation and parole officers, and others. Litigants who appeared before the court and weighed in. Naturally, some were satisfied and some were dissatisfied. Given the nature of the business, information received needed to be weighed in that light. All responses to the questions were filed anonymously, unless a party chose to provide his or her name. Vermont chooses to evaluate Supreme Court justices, Superior Court judges, and magistrates via the retention process versus having them campaign for election by the general public or being appointed for a lifetime term, as happens in other states. Election by the public in Vermont is a method of selecting only probate judges and assistant judges, formerly known as side judges. The Retention Committee was very conscientious in their work, and I thank them for their diligence. The committee thanks Eric Fitzpatrick from Legislative Counsel and our committee assistant, Peggy Delaney, for their work on judicial retention, which was completed via Zoom, partially via Zoom, and the last meetings being held here in the State House. Committee chair is elected every 2 years, alternating each term between the two bodies. As this completes my term as chair, I wanted to thank the committee for their support and their hard work over the past 2 years. And that completes my report, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge Thomas S. Durkin. The senator from Caledonia, Senator Benning, is recognized for the report on Superior Judge. Oops, we have, excuse me. Yep, excuse me. The member from Rutland City, excuse me, Representative Knott, is recognized to give the report on Superior Judge Thomas S. Durkin before we move to any debate. Representative is recognized.
Thank you. Judge Thomas Durkin is a resident of Brattleboro and a graduate of Vermont Law School. He is Superior Judge assigned to the Vermont Superior Court Environmental Division. He was first appointed a trial judge on January 31, 2005, which coincidentally was the day the Permit Reform Act of 2004 took effect. He was the second judge ever assigned to the Environmental Court and has worked from the start to have trials move more quickly and to issue decisions that address legal issues more clearly, which is no small task, given this court needs to decide the merits of 44 different types of land use or environmental appeals and a variety of environmental enforcement proceedings associated with local zoning, the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, and the Vermont Natural Resources Board. Well, that schedule would be more than enough to keep an individual busy. Because of recent COVID-related challenges, he has volunteered to help in other courts and has presided over various hearings in recent months as well. In anonymous reviews from attorneys and court staff, his overall judicial performance saw him rated good to excellent by the vast majority, over 90%. Things cited in his reviews were his good demeanor and that he is well suited for his position. Of course, no person is without their detractors. And one thing that was mentioned was a belief that he sometimes gave too much time to people unfamiliar with the court and who were unfamiliar with the process, which from at least this member's point of view is not actually a detraction at all. The Judicial Retention Committee voted to retain this judge by an 8-0-0 vote, and we would request that the full body do so as well. Thank you.
We will now proceed to any debate on Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge Thomas S. Durkin. The senator from Caledonia District, Senator Benning, is now recognized to give the report on Superior Judge David Fenster.
Madam President, I rise to report the findings of the Joint Judicial Retention Committee regarding Superior Court Judge David Fenster. Born in New York City in 1967, Judge Fenster graduated from the University of Vermont with a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1989 and from Cardozo School of Law with a Juris Doctorate degree in 1992. He currently lives in Middlebury. Judge Fenster began his legal career as a law clerk under Judge Conrad Kraft at the Bergen County Justice Center in Hackensack, New Jersey. And in 1993, he became a deputy state's attorney in Bennington County, subsequently became an associate and eventual partner at Barr, Sternberg, Moss, Lawrence, Silver, Saltonstall, and Scanlon. In 2009, he was elected state's attorney in Addison County and served in that role until 2016. Throughout his private practice, he practiced in criminal, juvenile, and civil law, including appeals before the Vermont Supreme Court. Appointed to the bench in December of 2016, this is his first retention process. He commenced service in the courts of Rutland and Chittenden counties, where he was responsible for proceedings in the criminal and family dockets. He is presently the presiding judge in Rutland and will likely remain in that position, serving primarily in the criminal division. Judge Fenster has been involved in the judiciary's administrative response to COVID-19. He served on the Special Committee on Video and Electronic Devices in the Court, the Rules for Electronic Filing Committee, the Standard Practices Committee, the Remote Civil Jury Trial Work Group, the Criminal Oversight Committee, and the Working Board overseeing implementation of the Odyssey Case Management System. During the retention process, Madam President, you have heard surveys are sent to lawyers, side judges, and non-lawyers who interact with the judge on a regular basis. In this particular case, 100% of all who responded recommended retention. Each judge is asked to define their role of the judge in our system of government, and Judge Fenster had this to say. Being entrusted to administer justice in criminal proceedings, resolve disputes between private citizens, resolve disputes within families, and make decisions regarding the best interests of vulnerable children are all awesome responsibilities that I reflect upon every day. I endeavor daily to keep sight of the individuals whose rights are at stake, whose interests are impacted, and whose lives may be changed by my decisions. Madam President, the committee found Judge Fenster to be direct, honest, and forthcoming in response to our questions. We believe he embodies the qualities that should define the character of our judicial branch of government, and voted unanimously in favor of his retention. And we ask the members of this body to do the same. Thank you, Madam President.
We will now proceed to any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge David Fenster. Seeing none, hearing none, the member from Burlington, Representative Colburn, is recognized to give the report on Superior Judge Carrie A. McDonald Katie.
Madam President, Judge Carrie Ann McDonald Katie was sworn in as a member of the Vermont Judiciary in October of 2019, and since then she has presided primarily over family court matters. Judge McDonald Katie received her Bachelor of Arts from Binghamton University and her Juris Doctorate from Vermont Law School. Prior to her appointment to the judiciary, she worked for our own legislative council as a clerk for the Vermont House and Senate Judiciary Committees, and served as a deputy state's attorney in both Bennington and Windham counties with a focus on juvenile and chins cases, and also worked in private practice at Fisher and Fisher Law offices. As an attorney, she received awards for her work on behalf of Vermont's children. The Vermont Supreme Court's Justice for Children Task Forces Award for exemplary child protection and juvenile justice work, and the Children and Family Services Commissioner's Community Award for outstanding service and contribution to the welfare of Vermont's children. Judge McDonald Katie continues to make significant contributions to Vermont's juvenile and family courts, not just as a presiding judge, but through her commitment to systematic improvements. She represents the judiciary on the Juvenile Stakeholders Working Group. She also participated in observation and review of her chins docket by the National Conference for State Courts as part of a judiciary project to further best practices. And she is participating in a pilot project to improve response times in juvenile delinquency cases. In both her supporting materials and her time with the committee, Judge McDonald Katie talked about how she is motivated by public service and about how rewarding she finds it to connect with juveniles, parents, and other impacted parties in the courtroom. She noted that people wait a very long time for their day in court, often in very difficult cases, and expressed how seriously she takes her role and her commitment to ensuring that people are able to share their stories as part of the process. She also shared the approach she takes with all litigants, a combination of deep listening and taking the time to make sure that all parties, who often include pro se or self-represented litigants, really understand the court proceedings. This thoughtful approach did not go unnoticed by attorneys in her courtroom. One wrote, "I have practiced in front of many family court judges, and I can say without hesitation that there is a noticeable difference in Judge McDonald Katie's rulings. Her attention to the family unit and to trauma-informed decision-making is an example of why I believe our state would be better served by having a dedicated family bench full of judges with specialized training." Another wrote, "I have such high respect for her as a judge. She has shown immense patience with pro se litigants. She has a calm yet strict demeanor in her courtroom. I would honestly suggest that she train other judges when handling pro se litigants and managing their caseloads." This is of particular note, I think, given that Judge McDonald Katie has served on the bench for just 3 years. In conversations with the committee, the judge expressed an ongoing commitment to balancing this approach, which does take time, with continuing to hone best practices and strategies for ensuring the timely resolution of these important cases. The strong quantitative and qualitative feedback we received from attorneys and court staff about Judge McDonald Katie bore out the committee's favorable evaluation. Madam President, your Judicial Retention Committee fully supported the retention of Judge McDonald Katie for an additional 6-year term on a vote of 800, and we ask members of this body to do the same. That concludes my report.
Is there any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge Carrie A. McDonald Katie? Seeing no, hearing no debate, the senator from Windsor, Senator McCormick, is recognized to give a report on Superior Judge Robert A. Mello.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to rise in support of the retention of Superior Court Judge Robert Mello. Robert Mello lives in Heinsberg. He was born in 1946, a classic boomer. He earned his bachelor's degree in 1968 from St. John's Seminary and his Juris Doctorate in 1971 from Boston College Law School. His 50-year legal career includes service with Downs, Racklin, and Martin, as well as his own firm. His honors include listing among the best lawyers in America and the highest possible ratings in ethics and ability from the Martindale-Hubbell Peer Review. He was appointed as a Superior Court judge by Governor Douglas in 2010 and retained in 2016. His present term is due to expire at the end of this month. As a Superior Court judge, he has heard cases in the criminal, civil, family, and juvenile dockets. This includes misdemeanors and felonies, abuse and neglect of children and of adults, delinquency, mental health, parentage, probate appeals, tax appeals, personal injury, commercial disputes, employment disputes, rental disputes, a virtual grand tour of the issues. As described by the chair of the Judicial Retention Committee, we interviewed Judge Mello. We read his statistics, the interviews with lawyers and with non-lawyers. And statistically, he received overwhelmingly high numbers in all criteria, temperament, management, fairness, etc. In the interest of full disclosure, no one is perfect, as has been pointed out, and there were some negative comments, but statistically, they were extreme outliers. I do know one, which was that it was said that Judge Mello speaks too quietly. And this is a problem that he acknowledges and is addressing. But his comments otherwise were overwhelmingly positive. That also includes prose comments as well as the statistics. He was often referred to terms like best judge in Vermont, best judge I have ever argued before. And I would mention that one comment after going on about his judicial performance on the bench also added, he's just a fine human being. His writings we found to be thorough, intelligent, and learned. Lawyers answered 98% yes on the question, should this judge be retained? Non-lawyers, that is to say side judges, guardians ad litem, et cetera, 100% yes. The vote in committee was 7-0-1 with an abstention from a committee member who was actually representing a client before Judge Mello at the time. I have his permission to inform the body that that case having been settled, he expects to vote yes today. And with that, Madam President, I'll conclude my remarks.
Is there any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge Robert A. Mello? The member from Pittsford, Representative Shaw, is now recognized to give the report on Superior Judge John Pax.
Madam President, I rise to report on the Honorable John L. Pack, who has appeared before the Judicial Retention Committee for the first time to seek retention to the Superior Court bench, having been appointed to the position in 2016. The first paragraph of his supporting statement for retention really sums up his experience while serving as a Superior Court judge. He says, and I quote, "The work has been extraordinarily rewarding, challenging at times as we serve day in and day out." He goes on to ask for the honor to serve another 6-year term. Judge Pack recently served as a float judge among Chittenden, Rutland, and Addison counties. During this time, his primary assignment was to preside over criminal, family, and relief from abuse cases. He's also served in the Orange and Washington counties, where he also presided over their treatment court. Currently, he has been assigned to the Chittenden County Criminal and Family Court, where he is the primary criminal trial judge. Judge Pack attended Ithaca College in 1971 and then on to Antioch College, receiving his BA in 1976. He then went on to Hofstra Law School, receiving his Juris Doctor degree in 1979. He began his legal career in 1979 in New York City, serving in various firms, and received a well-rounded background and education as a criminal defense attorney before coming to Vermont in 1987. Upon arriving in Vermont, he's been associated with 2 prestigious law firms where he honed his legal experience in the courts, representing a myriad of clients with cases ranging from family law to the most complicated criminal cases. Judge Pack has continued his legal education by participating in the many educational opportunities provided by the Vermont judiciary. As you have heard, the committee distributes anonymous surveys to attorneys, non-attorneys, court staff, and colleagues of the nominees for retention. These surveys provide valuable information to the committee regarding the court, judicial temperament, management of its court, case preparation, and legal ability of the nominee. When reviewing the surveys results for Judge Pact, the committee found broad support for his retention, with 97% of responding attorneys and 100% of non-attorneys supporting his retention. Part of the retention process includes a public hearing. A member of the public did appear and gave extensive testimony on their negative experience with Judge Pact involving a criminal case that was before the courts. Judge Pact was given the opportunity to respond to the testimony of the individual. He was questioned at length by the committee on the issues brought forth by that individual. Judge Pact did comment that he may have been a little too abrupt in his interactions with the witness. He then stated he is extremely dedicated to improve on this presumed fault and considers this a point of personal improvement. The committee discussed the issue in depth and concluded that Judge Pact is on a path to overcoming this shortfall in his thoughts. The committee is convinced the Honorable John Pact is a valuable asset to the Vermont judiciary, and on an 8-0-0 vote, recommends he be retained for another 6-year term and asks for your support. Madam President, that concludes my report.
Is there any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge John Pact? Hearing no debate, the senator from Windsor, Senator Nitka, is recognized for the report on Superior Judge Helen M. Torr.
Madam President, I'm reporting on the retention of Helen Torr, a judge of the Superior Court. Judge Torr, currently sitting in the Civil Division of the Superior Court in Rutland, was appointed to her position in 1999 by then Governor Howard Dean. She has presided in all of the Superior Courts in the state, which includes family, civil, criminal, and drug treatment. Judge Torr is a graduate of the University of Vermont and the University of Chicago Law School. Following law school, Judge Torr worked for a law firm in New York City as a litigation specialist for 5 years. She then worked for 2 years as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York before moving to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Vermont in Burlington. Judge Torr served there for 10 years as chief of the Civil Division until her appointment to the Superior Court. Judge Torr's primary focus in her current assignment is on civil cases. These cases often involve complex business disputes to disagreements between neighbors or involve plaintiffs who have been injured and are seeking compensation. Judge Torr added that the cases are always important to those involved, whether several $1,000s are at stake or millions, a 5-foot strip of land or an entire farm, the loss of a finger to lifelong debilitating injuries. The cases must be treated with the same respect and fairness, regardless of the issues. Judging from the responses received to questionnaires and the comments, Judge Torr is accomplishing this. Other noted comments were excellent legal mind, clear decisions, astute and fair, offers practical solutions, moves cases along, always prepared and expect lawyers appearing before her to also be prepared. As well, she is patient with pro se litigants and wants to ensure that they have been heard by the court. Another opinion was that she favored tenants over landlords in eviction cases, and Judge Torr reported that it is difficult to be sure tenants know their rights when not represented, but to not take over their side of the case. In response to a question regarding equal justice, Judge Torr expressed that the issue is broad and encompassing and should mean equal treatment throughout all the courts in the state. She is very concerned about unequal access to lawyers for those with less favorable financial means. She strongly supports the concept of civil Gideon, which takes its name from a case that led to the public defender system getting started for criminal defendants facing jail time. Judge Torr feels that lawyers should be provided to litigants in significant civil and family court cases. She would like to see the legislature establish and fund such a program. Judge Tour is a gold standard judge. She received excellent grades on the surveys, is highly respected, and an asset to our judicial system. Your retention committee voted unanimously, 8-0-0, in recommending the retention of Judge Helen Tour for another 6 years as a Superior Court judge, and we hope you will concur. Madam President, that completes my report.
Is there any debate on the Superior Judge up for retention, Superior Judge Helen M. Tour? That does conclude the reports. Is there any general debate? There being no debate, before the ballots are passed out, I want to remind you of the rules that govern us and also the process for voting for those voting in person and also remotely. Insofar as they are applicable, the Senate rules apply. No representative or senator may be absent from this joint assembly unless sick or otherwise necessarily detained. Upon being called to order, every representative and senator shall be seated. It is the duty of each representative and senator to vote unless excused by this joint assembly or unless he or she is directly or immediately interested in the question being voted on. You are to remain seated while the tellers distribute the ballots. If a member is not seated, no ballot will be replaced at the member's desk or seat. You would remain seated during voting and while the ballots are collected by the tellers. There is to be no milling about in the chamber during the counting of the ballots. You are requested to remain in your seats during the counting of the ballots. However, under the circumstances, if you feel more comfortable leaving the chamber after the ballots are collected, you may do so. If you leave the chamber during the counting of the ballots, you will not be permitted to re-enter the chamber until the counting of the ballots has been completed. For those of you participating electronically, when your ballots are sent electronically, please complete the ballots as instructed and return them within 5 minutes. This will permit compliance with JRS 44, including requirements of the Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk of the House provide assistance to remote voters in accordance with 17 VSA 2569. If you're ready for the question, the tellers will now distribute the ballots to the members of the Joint Assembly for this vote. The Clerk and Secretary of the Senate shall send ballots to those participating remotely. Are you ready for the question? The Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk are kindly asked to distribute the ballots. And the tellers are kindly asked to come down to the floor. Thank you. Okay, thank you. We do have some results to announce. Just allow for the feed to get reconnected. Please listen to the results of your vote. For Superior Court Judge Thomas S. Durkin, total votes cast 156, necessary for election 79, the yeas 154, the nays 2. Superior Judge Thomas S. Durkin, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 until his successor is elected and has qualified. For Superior Judge David Fenster, total votes cast 155, necessary for election 78, the yeas 155, the nays 0. Superior Judge David Fenster, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until his successor is elected and has qualified. For Superior Judge Carrie A. McDonald Katie, total votes cast 156, necessary for election 79, the yeas 154, the nays 2. Superior Judge Carrie A. McDonald Katie, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until her successor is elected and is qualified. For Superior Judge Robert A. Mello, total votes cast 155, necessary for election 79, yeas 155, the nays 1. Superior Judge Robert Mello, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until his successor is elected and has qualified. For Superior Judge John Pact, total votes cast 155, necessary for election 78, the yeas 155, the nays 0. Superior Judge John Pact, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until his successor is elected and has qualified. For Superior Judge Helen M. Tour, total votes cast 156, necessary for election 79, the yeas 153, the nays 3. Superior Judge Helen M. Tour, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared elected to the office of Superior Judge for a term of 6 years from and including the first day of April 2022 and until her successor is elected and has qualified. There being no further business to take up, okay.
Otherwise, the numbers don't add up. So for Bob Mello, he had 156. It's our typo, not yours.
Okay, the secretary informs me that the total votes cast was in fact 156 for Judge Mello, not 155. There being no further business to take up, this joint assembly is now dissolved.